but this is a personal topic that has sort of bled into my work, and I've presented to RAs about this. I've presented to our pro and grad staff at our sort of divisional things to full-time staff. And so I wish someone had told me these things early in my career before I got to where I am today. And I'm doing fine, so like we're good. But I hope that this presentation serves as being that encouragement for you to get involved with your money if you aren't already. I will say I am not super great with sharing screens, chat, etc. And we'll have a little bit of participation in a minute. And so I'm going to do my best to like watch the chat and sort of get your feedback. And so I can get a baseline of where we're at with our stuff, get your stuff together in the pulse check section of the presentation. So bear with me. I am a millennial, but I don't feel like a digital native. Before we begin, I wanted to kind of acknowledge my various privileges and sort of leg ups that I've had in my money journey. We all know that money is power and power is privilege, and there's many layers of why we might be in a certain place, what kind of home life we had as a kid, who was around us growing up, where we are working right now, all those kinds of things. So I don't want to get too in the weeds with that, but I do want to acknowledge I had two parents who went to college and both were accounting degree recipients, but I still came out of grad school with $40,000 in student loan debt. And so even if you do have sort of access to information and knowledge about these things, the world is the world. And I started college in 2008 during one terrible recession, and it's been an adventure ever since. So, but I do want to, kind of acknowledge that that's some of my history influencing where I'm at today. And we are all products of that, and that's fine. And I really hope that this presentation is encouraging to you. And at no point do I ever I'm not aiming to make anybody feel bad about their finance situation, but sometimes it's scary to realize that we're at where we're at, and we have the things and obstacles to overcome that we have. But the good thing about money is it's just math, and girl math, boy math, everyone math, it's still math. And some of this is very hard to do, but it's also simple. So buckle in. Today's highlights include a pulse check. We will also talk about the basics of budgeting, which is the foundation of all of financial planning. That is how the majority of people build wealth, is just with their income that they have from their job. We all are working in higher ed and housing right now. So you get a paycheck, I hope, and you get to choose how you spend your money. We will talk a little bit about retirement. I know most folks are probably in their early parts of their careers on this call and thinking about stopping work at like 65-ish maybe is a long way off. But as youngsters, we have a resource that a lot of older folks don't have, which is time. And we'll talk a little bit about compound interest and letting your money work harder than you eventually, which will be great. That's when you get to retire and still have money and not have to work until you die at your desk, which my friend Jillian says that's her plan. And I don't want that for her, and I don't want that for y'all. And then I will have a slide full of resources. I have used them or watched them on YouTube or watched them on, I don't have TikTok, but the TikToks eventually come to the YouTubes and the Instagram Reels. And so I'll watch them and learn from them. I haven't, watched every single thing they've ever put out online, so I can't endorse every single video and everything they ever say, but they're resources I think that have definitely been helpful for me, and I think will be helpful for you as well. So if you're kind of crunched for time and you are like, I don't know if I can sit here the whole time, we post these videos, I think, on the internet later. However, this is the one thing that I want you to receive from this presentation today. Please pay attention to your money. Just checking your debit account, your checking account, if you've got a savings account, excellent. And seeing what money is there before you spend money is not the same as having a plan, aka a budget for your money, or having goals for your money, goals for your life, and how money as a tool can help you get there. So please don't log off. But if you needed to, you've gotten the gist of this, which is be involved with your finances much more than just making sure you get paid and then making sure you have money before you go to Chipotle, which I love Chipotle. But the real meat, here we are at the pulse check. And let me do my best to monitor the chat. Oh my gosh, hi Lily, hi Q. Our first pulse check question, and you can sort of react in the chat. You can answer the question if you feel really brave, but mostly I just want kind of a yes or no, happy, negative emoji of the answers to these. So how do you know how much money you spent yesterday? I bought a coffee at Dutch Bros because we have a Dutch Bros in Baton Rouge that opened like 3 days ago. So that was like $7 or $8. I like bought one for my coworker as well, and they paid me back. So I spent like $7. Then I also bought a ticket to Jollywood Nights at Hollywood Studios in Disney World. That was $170. So that's what I spent yesterday. So if you're in the chat, if you're there, give me like a thumbs up or a thumbs down or like a yay or a nay. Do you know how much money you spent yesterday? Our second question is, do you know how much debt you have? Lily, I'm so happy. I have about $4,000 left on a car loan. I paid my student loans off in February of 2020 and didn't have any debt for like 4 years until I had to buy a new car because my transmission ran out. So do you know how much debt you have? You can post the amount if you want. Normalize it. Normalize talking about money. Do you have savings? This can be a yes or a no. Do you have savings? Most people in the United States do not. So you're in good company if you're like, I have a $100. That's most people cannot afford $1,000 emergency. The next question is, especially as live-on folks, oftentimes you'll have a meal plan, and sometimes it's got, like, we have paw points at LSU, so you'll have some branded sort of real money thing plus swipes usually. Do you use that benefit from your job, or do you just prefer to go drive through somewhere, get some food, come back quickly? This benefit usually goes away, like the meal plans that we have on our campus. The dollar carries over, but the swipes don't carry over from fall to spring. And so at the end of fall, people are like, hey, does anyone want to go to lunch? I got swipes. And so that's a benefit that expires. So please use it. And then, do you have a budget? Yes or no in the chat. Do you have a plan for what your money does every month or every year? I'm so interested in this because this is very fundamental to the rest of all of this. You got to know what your money's doing. You got to have a plan for your money. So I think we're generally in good shape. I love this. But there's more. There's always more. So thank you for that participation. And hopefully we will talk about budgeting. So there's three sort of main types of budgets that I see on all of the personal finance, social media things that come up. One is the 50-30-20 rule budget. One is a zero-based budget, and one is cash and envelope stuffing. And they are useful in different ways and sort of for different things, and just sort of depending on who you are and how you think of your money and how your brain works. These are all different ways of planning how you're going to spend your monthly checks. If you get birthday money, love that. I'm sort of aged out of that in my family. But the 50-30-20 budget will also do a little bit of math on in the next few slides, so you can see how this might roll out. The 50-30-20 budget says 50% of your take-home pay should be spent on your needs. That includes shelter, food, the insurance that you pay if you have a car, your car notes, if it's not paid off, clothing, and not like fun, expensive clothing that we have like for, maybe I bought an outfit when I went to the Beyonce Renaissance concert in New Orleans a couple of years ago. That's really a want kind of clothing, not a need kind of clothing. I need shoes that are appropriate for work. I need clothing that is appropriate for work. I don't maybe need a long sleeve sequined Virgo season top, which I do have, and it's fine. And I bought on sale. There are lots of folks who use a zero-based budget, which basically says instead of, 50-30-20, we weren't done. 30% of your take-home pay should be spent on your wants, which would be the sequin shirts, the Chipotle, the DoorDash, the video games, the Disney tickets. And then 20% of your budget should go to debt payoff and or savings, including your retirement. We'll talk about the math of this in a second. Zero-based budgets are a plan for your money, but they don't necessarily split it up into these sort of categories, 50%, 30%, 20%. This would be more like just a list of all your fixed expenses that I have to pay my cell phone bill, I've got my car insurance, I've got my renter's insurance if you're living on. I hope you have renter's insurance. You kind of list all of that stuff out, and then you think, well, what am I going to do next month? Am I saving for a big trip? What is my, short-term, long-term plans? And you do the math and you develop your zero-based budget. Cash and envelope stuffing is kind of like the most easy way to make sure you are abiding by your 50-30-20 or whatever you've developed in your zero-based budget. So maybe you say, I'm going to do $150 for my car insurance, and I'm going to have all these things. And you'll say, I need to spend maybe $250 a month on food. That's if you have a meal plan. If you don't have a meal plan, I don't know how you're only spending 250 bucks on food. But anyway, you'll have your food envelope that has $250 cash in it. And when you spend that cash, you don't spend any more in that budget. This is great if you are trying to pay off a lot of debt, if you got a lot of credit card debt, or maybe a car loan that's upside down and you need to get rid of that and work really hard at that. The cash envelope stuffing is a great way to do that because you physically can see, I have half of my money, I have 25% of my money left, and we're only halfway through the month, whatever it is. And when you're done with that category until you stuff the envelope again after payday. So we'll get a little bit into 50-30-20. No matter what kind of budget you have, you need to monitor what you are doing and what you are spending. Every month I check, actually really a couple of times a week, I check all of my credit cards because I'm a credit card points person and I never pay interest on my credit cards. I pay them off every month. I check my Venmo to see what I have spent and what people have sent to me and make sure if people owe me that they've given me their money, but that what I have paid, I'm also taking into account because that's not on my credit cards. I check my bank account because some of my bills come directly out of my checking. And then sometimes I even will go double check like if I've ordered something online and it's not showing up in my credit card yet, I will check my emails to make sure, oh, that thing that I ordered yesterday was $42 or whatever. So you need to monitor your money no matter what you're doing, and we'll talk about needs, wants, and savings. So 50% of your take home should go to your needs. We've chatted a little bit about food, clothing, your car payment, insurance payments, shelter. Make sure this does not exceed 50% of your take home pay. When it exceeds 50% of your take home pay, that is when it gets really hard to save for the future or save for right now and accomplish the things that have to get paid off. So that is why this is the sort of a general guideline. Here's the math part. And I checked it like 2.5 times. And so if the math doesn't math, let me know at the end, but not while I'm presenting. This statistic or this sort of 50%, in my opinion, should be adjusted because typically live-in staff or live-on staff make a little bit less money than folks in similar positions, similar coordinator. Sometimes area coordinators or assistant directors are still, live on campus because of duty things and whatever. But often you really aren't making as much money as your peers because you have this wonderful benefit of living for free. Now, it's not as big of a difference as the math that I think we should do. It's, maybe $5,000 or $7,000 difference. And it costs much more than $5,000 or $7,000 to pay rent and pay utilities and live off campus, every year. But this is how I have adjusted for that, because if you make more money, the percentage of your 50% or 30% or 20% are going to be higher. And so what I found when I finally was reviewing my personal money was I had only ever made, well, when I started as a hall director, I made $28,000 a year in 2014. And a similar coordinator level position on my campus would have been making 35 up to 40 maybe. And so just the act of having a larger paycheck, even though they were paying for their housing and living off campus, more money went into their retirement accounts, more money went into their savings accounts because they just made more money. So I've adjusted from just a straight up 50% here, and I'm going to do my best to explain, and I hope you can follow along. I do want to do a little myth busting as well. I've heard many times in my career that live on staff pay themselves rent every month as like preparing to move off of campus. I think that is wonderful. No one's ever said, gosh, I have too much money in my savings account. However, I think that leads to an unrealistic place of paying yourself rent, because rent is not $600 or $700. Rent is like $1,000 minimum, depending on where you are and if you don't want a roommate. I'm an assistant director. I'm on the lead team at my institution in the res ed unit, and I pay the least in rent, which is $1,050. I live pretty close to school. I don't like having to come onto campus late at night, and I certainly don't want a 30-minute commute in the way of that. Other people pay $1,200, $1,350. I have a couple of colleagues who own their homes and their mortgages are like $1,500 or $1,600 a month. And so I think saving money is great, but I think labeling it as paying yourself rent is just not really, that's not the full picture. Plus utilities are on top of that. So anyway, when you are making your budget, pretend that your salary covers rent and utilities, and you can get really detailed and base this on where you live, and you can ask your colleagues who live off campus, what do you pay every month in these things? If they're cool sharing, you can research on the internet, on Zillow, apartments.com, whatever. Fine tune this as much as you would like to. When you're building your budget, I'm going to say, surprise, everyone on this call makes $40,000 and you live in. If you don't make that much, bear with me with the math. If you make more than that, great, congratulations. And we're also gonna say it takes about $1,250 a month for you to live off campus, including your rent, including your utilities. So we're gonna say it takes $15,000 a year for you to live off campus. We're pretending we're inflating your salaries a little bit. So your salary, we're gonna pretend, again, is $55,000. You make 40, you bring home what you bring home. We're gonna pretend you make 55 and you're covering your housing expenses as if you lived off campus. So taking 30% out for taxes, social security, et cetera, maybe, you know, as this $40,000 a year, your monthly pay is $2,333. That's 40 divided by 12 minus 30%. So that's $2,333. And 50% of that is what you should spend on your needs. So that would be, simple math is $1,167. I argue that you should factor in this off-campus pay, pretend like you're making more than you're making, so that you do have more to put in savings because your salary are already skewed from being a little bit smaller. So 55,000 divided by 12 minus 30% is $3,200 a month. And we're just gonna remove $1,250 because we've paid rent and utilities to total $1,250. And we're gonna do that number times 50%, which is gonna decrease the money that we have to spend on our needs, but that money is gonna go into our savings in a couple of slides. So instead of just taking your pay and just times 50%, we're biasing this pay as if we made more money so that we are covering our savings and our retirement at a higher pay level, even though we're not there. And if you work at an institution that you have a pension, which some schools do still have that, you can't adjust typically the money that you're putting in there. And so I'll talk about a little bit at the end, setting up a high yield savings account or a Roth IRA to put that extra money. But we will get there when we get there. So in our scenario here, we make $40,000 a year. We've pretended that we're making 55. And so 979 of our dollars we can spend on our needs: clothes, food, car, insurance, cell phone bill, etc. So we'll move to our wants, which is the fun part, and 30% is pretty hot in my opinion. Like, this is the math that everyone in the financial space talks about. So good for us. We get 30% to spend on whatever we want. And the remainder of our actual paycheck minus $979 of our needs, 30% of that is $699 a month. That's a lot. And somehow we manage to spend it, right? Like, you get the Disney ticket. I'm in a Mardi Gras crew over in New Orleans, and I spent $45 on a ticket to one of my crew events this weekend. Like, you think, oh, I'm really not even that busy. Like, I'm not traveling. I'm traveling in December, but I bought this ticket and stuff now. So 30% times all of this math equals about $700 a month that you can spend on whatever you want. This is up to you. If you're a Disney person, great. Ethically, there's issues with everything. So you might not be a Disney person. You might be a national parks person. You might be a book person and you want to just buy books all the time. I wish I had the money to do that, but I prioritize traveling, and I'm trying to travel international since we can do that now because the corona pandemic is mostly over. So into savings, a couple of notes here. This includes your debt payoff and your retirement. We have savings on purpose to use them, but if you can pay out of your just sort of operating budget every month and not touch your savings, wonderful. Your savings are there for these sorts of things. If you do your math and you end up with 20% of your take home is $466. And we're going to put that difference between our simple math on our salary and our pretend math that we've paid our housing living off campus. That extra $188 from our needs will go into our savings. Now, this is a lot. This is like saving over $500 a month. Reminder, again, this includes debt, student loan payments, car payments, credit cards. So it might seem like, gosh, I'm saving so much money. If you don't have any debt, yes, you are. But if you've got some debt, that's going to take a hot second to kind of build your savings up. Noted kind of in the bottom corner is emergency funds. The internet says 3 to 6 months. I say 6 months. Again, no one's ever been sad that they saved too much money or had too much money to fall back on. During COVID, a lot of schools furloughed their staff. They didn't get paid, but maybe they got to stay on campus. Maybe they didn't get to do either of those things and they had to move home with parents or move in with friends or do what they needed to do. The more money you have, the more freedom and choice you have. And so I say 6 months of essential living expenses, including if you were having to pay rent. If you lose your on-campus living job, you're gonna have to pay rent, or you got to move in with someone or find some other way to not pay rent. But just because you really only have $500 of expenses a month, including your cell phone bill and food and that kind of thing, because you don't pay rent, doesn't mean that that's what you should base your kind of emergency savings on. I would also advise for you to put your emergency savings because that's going to be a pretty big chunk of money. Maybe you can live off of $1,500 a month, but that's times 6. And now I'm doing public math, which I hate, which I think is $9,000 total. That's going to sit somewhere. And when you put it in what's called a high yield savings account, you earn interest on it just sitting there. It's usually right now it's between maybe 3.5% and 4% interest, which on $9,000 is like $30, but it's 30 more bucks than you had, and you didn't earn anything leaving it in a regular savings account with your bank. I'll have a resource at the end that will tell you what the best high yield savings accounts right now are. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned. So we've done our budget, we've planned our money, everything's going amazing. We have worked in our jobs a couple of years and we are so excited. We've gotten an off-campus, living off-campus higher role. We're so jazzed, and now we get to go find where we live. So most people will think, oh gosh, I need to own a home, like equity. And, I put money into this home, which is a use asset that may depreciate in value, it may increase in value. If I put my money in my house instead of renting, I can sell the house. But I don't know if I'm going to even be in this role for 5 to 7 to 10 years, which is sort of the cutoff for buying a house and making it like profitable, or selling your house after you've just moved and after you've had to fix the air conditioning and blah, blah, blah. So thinking about, do I rent or do I own? Information. Right now, currently, October 2025, mortgage interest rates are pretty high. They're not as high as they've ever been, but a few years ago, they were in the 3% range, and now they are in like the 6 to 7% range. It requires a lot of savings to put down a hefty down payment. In the past, it was the sort of advice was put down 20%. Well, if your home costs $200,000, 20% is $40,000. So good on you if you've managed your money and you've come out of living on campus with 40,000 bucks to do a down payment on a house. Most of us are not in that place. And so lots of lenders, mortgage lenders will let you put down, 3 to 5%, which is much more manageable, but you're going to pay extra interest rates because you haven't put down that traditional kind of 20%. And so your interest rate is already high, plus more because no one hardly can put $40,000 down on a house. And most houses aren't $200,000 anymore. They're like 375 or $400,000. Right now, there's a lot of indicators that perhaps a recession is coming, perhaps not. We usually don't know until we're in it already, and the quarterly data is released. The housing market looks really wild. There's a lot of unoccupied homes, and the tariffs have increased the prices of materials. There's labor shortages. The housing market is just pretty much more volatile than it ever has been. That's something just to think about. And depending on where you live, most places right now, it is more financially solvent or smart for you to rent at a lower cost than to buy, just math wise. But you may live in a town or city or area or get a job in one of those places where that's the opposite. So my advice is to research a lot before you buy a home. Oftentimes, if you are still working in a housing and residential life office, they may allow you to live on campus in an apartment somewhere for maybe 3 months as you're looking for housing. If they don't do that, I would say find somewhere that you can afford that is meets whatever criteria you have, that you can rent for a year or two as you sort of settle into your role, save up some more money, decide maybe where in town you want to move and purchase a home, or maybe you don't want to. I am in Louisiana and our homeowners insurance rates double every year because of hurricane stuff, because of other things. And I can't afford to own a home here probably ever unless the housing market crashes. And then on behalf of all like homeowners, like, I'm sorry that your home is not worth anything anymore, but that's the only way that I will be able to afford purchasing a house here. And that's just real. That's just the real. So you've moved off campus, you've bought a house, or you're renting, whatever, live your best life. Eventually you get old. Hopefully, it's a privilege to grow old, and I keep telling myself that. So retirement is really the goal for managing your money effectively. We Our bodies fall apart, our bodies change because we become parents. We may have an accident, and now, like, I think there was a statistic that I saw a few months ago that like 60% or 70% of adults in Louisiana will have a disability, a physical disability at some point in their life. Our bodies do not last, hopefully, as long as our minds and our lives do. And so we don't want to have to work for our living. We want our money to have done all this work in the background, all this time that we could have had our investments in the stock market growing as 20-something-year-olds, perhaps. We want to let that take care of us. We don't want to have to work anymore. I'm also an AI conspiracy theorist, and I think a lot of our jobs will be gone by the time we get to retirement age to AI, or they won't want to employ 60-something-year-olds. And so we do all of this stuff now to set ourselves up to be able to live life without having to work once we hit whatever retirement age is. Right now, I think it's 62, or maybe they raised it to 65. They're talking about raising it to 67. I don't really want to work till 67, but like, we'll see. So there's a few different, very broad types of retirement accounts that I think it's important for you to just have really basic knowledge of right now as you're a young person and you have time to plan. Hopefully you're young. If you're not young, you're young at heart, and that's what matters. So 401k is a really common type of retirement account that you probably hear about. A lot of corporate and like not public or higher education companies have 401ks, and the 403b is sort of the higher ed version of that. Typically, you put in 8%, maybe 9% of your gross pay. That's before any taxes and stuff are taken out. And your employer matches a certain percentage, maybe up to 4% or 6%. Sometimes they will match 100% up to 3%, and then 50% up to 5%. So really you're getting 4% total of a match. And the financial advice always is to put as much money into that account as you will definitely get a match on. Eventually, you can do kind of your own thing and do your own retirement accounts, which we'll talk about in a couple of seconds. But make sure you're getting whatever your employer match offers, because that is free money. That is you putting your money in, your company putting their money in for you. There's different timelines of being vested and having that money be yours versus your money needs to stay in that account for some time or whatever. Sometimes you can roll over your whole nest egg at once to somewhere else, and sometimes you might have to leave it there. So broad information on that. Double check your paperwork. You've got HR people, retirement benefits people on your campus who are much more expert at your unique situation and your structure than I am. So make sure you talk with them, or you read your policies and you understand kind of what those are. You may have a pension. I do. I didn't mean for it to be that way, but it is. When I worked in Mississippi, we could choose between having the pension, which is a guaranteed payout after a certain age. You get a certain amount of money every single month until you die. Or we could have chosen a 403b, but we really couldn't. So we got the pension. That money typically has to stay where it is until you reach retirement age. And so I've got money sitting in Mississippi that I can't access until I'm 60 something, but it's guaranteed. No matter what the stock market does, no matter what my investment portfolio particularly does, my money is coming to me from the state of Mississippi from when I claim it and I'm retirement age until I die. The longer you work somewhere, the higher your salary is. That goes into a formula, which then tells you how much money you will have every month. So use your calculators and things that are on your HR websites if you have that. I don't think I explicitly stated that 401ks and 403bs are like stock market retirement accounts. So your money's in the stock market. If the stock market does great, you get lots more money. If your stock market does bad, you lose all your money. And a pension, that money's in the stock market too, just not on your behalf, usually on the state's behalf. But it's at a much lower risk. So you will still be fine, and they have to pay you because that's the law. An IRA is an individual retirement account. So if you just want to have a money, like a place where you put your money that you are like, this is my retirement. I don't need this right now. I'm not touching it till I'm retirement age, until the law says I can start withdrawing. Setting up a Roth IRA is a great option, because Roth accounts are taken out after you've paid your taxes, after you paid Social Security, after you've paid your Medicare stuff. And when you take your money out, when you are retiring, you don't have to pay taxes on it because you already did. And that's a really sweet deal. Most money is very much taxed, and Roth IRA money is not taxed when you withdraw it. This blurb here applies if you're 20 years old. If you're in your 20s, every $1 that you invest, you put it in the stock market, you put it in your Roth IRA, you put it, you've got money kind of in a pension. Each dollar that you invest, AKA save, now in your 20s can be worth $88 when you reach retirement age. In your 30s, it goes down to about $45. In your 50s, it's like $28. And in your 60s, it's like $4. So even if you can only put $50 extra in your retirement, in your 403B, even if you can only put $50 in a Roth IRA every month right now, that has the potential, because of compound interest over 40 years, of becoming $88 when you retire. We didn't talk about inflation. We only have so much time, but put your money in a Roth IRA right now, tomorrow, if you can. Social Security, who knows if it's going to be there tomorrow? Who knows if it's going to be there when I'm retiring in another 30 years, or when you're retiring perhaps in another 40 years? I'm generally speaking about your age. You can live on campus at any age and make your money without having a lot of risk because you live where you work. Here are some resources. So all of these things I actively use pretty much weekly. I watch the Money Guy show several times a week. NerdWallet is a website that reviews products. So they review high yield savings accounts, they review travel credit cards, they review investment accounts. So you can go to NerdWallet and say, best high yield savings accounts 2025, and it will have a blog article for you to look through. And it'll tell you what interest rates the accounts have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The Budgetnista started me on this incredible journey all these years ago. She got me with a Facebook ad. She was a teacher in a lot of debt, dug her way out, made resources and plans, and wrote books, and helped lots of other people, particularly women, but all of this applies to everyone with money. And I found her incredible, like she lowered the barrier of not knowing what these things meant for me enough that I actually engaged with finding out how much debt I really had, writing a list of all my student loans and their interest rates, et cetera, et cetera. So I can't tell you enough. That's where I started. She's still putting out incredible information and content. The Money Guy Show is a YouTube channel. They have a website. One of the money guys has written a couple of books. They give great money advice based on real math. There's not a lot of emotion involved. Personal finance is personal, but the maths. They're both fiduciary financial advisors, which fiduciary means they have to put your interest before their own and before their companies when they're advising you on what to do with your money. So they've got a lot of experience helping already kind of wealthy people stay wealthy, but they put information out there for all of us at every different kind of wealth level. They have what is called the Financial Order of Operations, which is FOO, that FOO at the end there. That is literally a prescribed order that you should do your money. First, you cover your deductible, your highest deductible, maybe your healthcare deductible is $4,000. You have that much in savings. Then you move on to paying your high interest debt off. Once you've paid your high interest debt off, then you max out your retirement accounts. I mean, it really step by step tells you exactly what to do in what order. Can't go wrong. The math is the math. It's not a linear process. You can restart. You can, bounce around if you need to, but very handy. And it's just based on real life numbers. Dave Ramsey, you probably have heard of him. He is an excellent resource if you have a lot of debt to pay off, if you can't trust yourself with credit cards, if you don't know where to start paying your debt off. He, I think, is great for that. Once you've paid off your debts, I think he bases a lot of his advice in really emotional things or kind of old school, unrealistic things So if you want to look him up, fabulous. I think once you've paid your debts off, you can go back to the Money Guy show, but the Money Guys talk about paying debt too. The financial audit is a person named Caleb Hammer. There's a lot of shorts that come up on my YouTube or reels that come up on my Instagram of him like yelling at people. He audits people's finances and puts it all out there for the world to see. I feel a lot better usually after I watch the people that are on his channel. But it is a lot of yelling, and it kind of could make you perhaps feel really bad about your financial place, but wanted to put different options out there for different kinds of people. The Financial Diet is a YouTube channel run by bitter millennial women, which sort of same. They do a lot more social commentary than some of the other channels and other resources. And so if that's something that you kind of want to incorporate into your financial, like absorbing information, I think that's a great place to start. And they do more sort of like interviews now than they used to do, like, here's how to pay down debt. So you might be interested in some of their videos from like 2 or 3 years ago for actual tips on like how to plan your money and how to make a budget. Your Rich BFF is also someone who comes up on my like YouTube shorts, Instagram reels a lot. She does really short clips of explaining the stock market, explaining a recession. She worked on Wall Street, got burnt out, and is like, let me tell you all this stuff that I learned. We all can be, you know, in a financially good place. And then Aja Dang is a YouTuber. She had a lot of videos several years ago paying down her debt, and she's now making some newer content about kind of getting back into managing her money a little bit better because her like social media work has dried up a little bit. And so that's just kind of interesting to follow her journey. But her older content is like really great examples of her paying off a lot of consumer kind of credit card debt. Again, if you only take away one thing from this presentation, it is to pay attention to your money and to start a Roth IRA tomorrow. Go to NerdWallet. They'll tell you best ones to open, low fees, etc. There's apps for all of this now, so the barrier to enter into the financial space and kind of taking control of your money has never been lower. There's a lot of things right now that kind of suck in the world, but this is kind of an exciting place to have a lot easier access to financial resources and literally to be able to use and engage with them because they're on the apps or they're on the internet and anybody can apply and start an account and whatever. So that is that. Thank you very much. I love to coach people or talk through your money, or if you just want to say hi, this is my email. I have a pretty unique name. There's only 2 Tara Allspaws in the world. One of them works for Whole Foods in Oregon, and the other is me. And I am going to stop sharing. And thanks so much. If you have questions, let me know.